Hi, my name is Sean Walker, and I'm a Principal Product Success Architect and part of the Ranger team here at ServiceNow. Today I'm going to be talking to you about removal candidates and the software reclamation. So we're going to talk today about what removal candidates are. We're going to take a look at the SAM 9.0 process from the SAM process guide. And we're going to talk about reclaiming software installations. And then I'm going to get into a demo and do some reclamation and go through the flow with you. What are removal candidates? Removal candidates is a list of software installations that can be uninstalled from your environment. There's a couple of different processes within ServiceNow that can create these removal candidates. The first is the reclamation rules. So when reclamation rules conditions are met, reclamation, or they're sometimes called reclamation candidates, sometimes kind of removal candidate, depends on what you're reading, but they are generated when those reclamation rules are met. And I have done a separate video on reclamation rules and setting those up, so be sure to watch that. The next way that removal candidates get created is through the remediation options. So when a SAM manager is reviewing their compliance position and reviewing their specific entitlements in their license usage dashboard, under the remediation options, they're going to have the option to generate a removal candidate for some installations. Another way they get generated is automatically by restricted software installations. So software models can be flagged as restricted, and when those installations are detected for that software model, those removal candidates get automatically created. And lastly, you can also create removal candidates manually. So this is the Software Asset Management Process Guide, SAM 9.0, or Optimized Software Installation Process. So if you guys don't have a copy of the SAM Process Guide, I definitely recommend you go take a look at that and download a copy for yourself. So the process guide can be found on the Now Create website, which is part of Now Learning. So I definitely recommend going out there, look for SAM Process Guide, and get a copy of this. So when we start talking about removal candidates and we start talking about reclaiming software entitlements, this is the process that talks about that. So as you can see here, part of this process, we've got the SAM 9.3, which is the create and update removal candidates, right? We talked about how those can get created by the SAM manager, right, as they're doing reviewing their license usage. We've also got the SAM 9.2, right, which is the monthly software usage report. So your reclamation candidates are going to be generated by reclamation rules based off that software usage. There's also the SAM 9.4, which is execute the reclamation rules and create software removal requests. So that's the process where the SAM manager is going to actually choose to reclaim the software. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then so on and so forth, right? You do have the option to notify the users before you remove it or not, etc. So we're going to go through that in a bit more in the demo as we talk through the flow as well. So what happens with reclaiming software installation? So what is the process? So what happens in ServiceNow is when a removal candidate is created, the SAM manager then has the option to either reclaim that software or skip that particular record. There might be reasons why they want to ignore that particular reclamation candidate or removal candidate. So when the reclaim option is selected, it's going to trigger the reclamation workflow behind the scenes. So when you're setting up your reclamation candidates, if you watched that other video, there's this little, you'll see that there's this little checkbox you can enable, which is notify users. So when that has been selected and this reclaim process starts, the user will be sent an email and asking them telling them their software is going to be removed, If they need to keep it, they need to basically go through an approval flow, which is kicked off as well. So for on-premise software installations, those can be removed manually, which by generating a task for the teams to manually uninstall that software, or they can be removed automatically. But to remove it automatically, you need to be using client software distribution in 2.0. So client software distribution is a separate plugin that needs to be installed and configured to be able to do the removal of software installations. The key thing here is that, not only do you need to configure client software distribution in your instance and connect it up to the SCCM environment, the SCCM environment is also going to need to have all of those packages, those uninstallation packages created so that you can actually trigger those through the reclamation process. So you definitely want to take time planning and testing the automatic removal of on-premise software installations using CSD. Now, if it's a SaaS subscription, those can again be removed manually or by generating a task to remove the subscription right from the publisher's API, or they can be done automatically with an API call to that publisher. Now, the important thing to note here is not all publishers will basically publish on their API a method to remove that subscription. So that's something to really keep in mind. Each publisher is going to be different. So you really also need to understand is what happens when you reclaim a SaaS subscription, what API call will be triggered, what will actually happen in that publisher's portal. So you really want to make sure that the default behavior of what our integration with that SaaS provider is going to do. So for example, do you want to automatically delete the subscription, right? Because some of those publisher reclamation flows actually remove the user from the portal, and subsequently it removes all the data associated with that user. And your companies might have some sort of data retention policy that needs to be adhered to. So you may or may not be able to use the out-of-the-box reclamation for the SaaS publishers if it doesn't meet your business needs. So I highly recommend you checking out the ServiceNow doc, Reclaim User Subscriptions. And in there, it'll tell you what each one of these particular direct integrations with these SaaS providers is going to do when you reclaim that software. So now I'm going to jump into an instance of Washington, and I'm going to show you the reclamation candidates or removal candidates. Okay, so I've logged into my Washington instance of ServiceNow with Software Asset Management installed, and I'm going to take you through removal candidates and then walk you through reclaiming software installation and the steps you need to take. So to get to the the removal candidates, you go to the license usage workbench, and you can actually see all the removal candidates here. So we select removal candidates, and this is going to give us the ability to add some more columns. So I have added a few extra columns here just so you guys could see a bit more information. And so really what we want to do is you can actually go ahead and you can sort these by different states. So we're just going to group this by state so you can see all the different states here, because these are all the different phases that these particular removal candidates are going through. You see there's quite a few removal candidates in my particular demo instance because I do have quite a few reclamation rules set up that are tracking software usage. So you can sort removal candidates just to kind of see where they are, right? Is okay, here's some attention required I might need to take a look at. There's some here that are awaiting user approval, and there's some here that are in the process of just waiting for those installations or subscriptions to be removed as part of their flow. And then there's a bunch closed, some skipped, etc. So that's one way you can kind of group and look at these different removal candidates. Just going to clear this out here now. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go through and look at removing one for WinZip. So I'm going to just take a quick look here, and we can see we've got 7 removal candidates in the system for WinZip, and some of them are at different stages, right? This one's closed complete. This one's already been processed and it's awaiting actual removal of the software. And then we've got these 4 additional ones here that are all ready to actually reclaim. And we can see here by the description, right, they're on different assets, or different CIs have these installation records. So I'm an asset manager and I want to remove WinZip, all these installations of WinZip from my environment. Actually, maybe I'll just do one manually first. So we're just going to go through and do one manually and say, okay, let's take a look at this particular reclamation candidate. This is DC02, so this is a domain controller. I don't really want to process an automatic reclamation for this. It's probably okay that this is here. We're just going to close skip this. And so I can just address this particular reclamation candidate by choosing close skip and save that record. So now that one will move to the close skip state. And then we can look at going ahead and maybe reclaiming one or all of these particular reclamation candidates. So if I want to go ahead and remove all these things, what I will do here is now click on the Reclaim All. And what that's going to do is it's going to kick off the reclamation flow. So I'm just going to go into one of these reclamation candidates here. And you see it's already at the awaiting revocation state. So what I'm going to do is you can actually see the workflow. And you can actually see the workflow and where this particular reclamation candidate is in the flow. So I just want to take a few minutes here to talk about the reclamation flow because it's a little bit complex. So the reclamation flow gets triggered when you click on that reclaim button, right? And then it determines whether or not it needs to go through an approval process. So if you remember when we created a reclamation rule and we went through that video, there was the option to notify the user. So when you notify a user, it will create an email approval for them that they have to either accept or reject. So why don't I pause the video? I'm just going to go find one of those emails to show you what they look like. So 1 minute. Okay, so I went into the email and I just found one here that's an actual email that was triggered for requesting approval. So this is, not as pretty a version as the end user will receive, but basically, as you can see here, it says Adobe Systems has been flagged for reclamation due to low usage. Do you still need this software on asset IBM? So that's a particular asset that it would be trying to reclaim against. And so the user has the option to, yes, keep the software, or no, remove the software. So if they click on no, it's going to not trigger the approval flow. But if they click on yes, I need to keep this, the default approval flow would be to go to their manager for approval to keep the software. So that's what this section is here about. All these are about approvals and waiting for approvals, etc. So once the approvals have finished, it'll come down and it will run this particular script. And what this script does is this is a reclamation flow for any type of software. So if you remember when we talked about in the presentation all the different types of software that may have different methods of reclamation, be it SaaS or on-premise, this is where the flow will determine what to do with it. And so since WinZip, which is the one we were looking at the flow here that was triggered for WinZip, is installed software, right? So it's installed on a device. It's taken this path. And so what'll happen is it will go into the finished state. And for some reason, I can't see my mouse to scroll over here. Oh, there it is. it is now finished. So the actual workflow for WinZip is finished. If it was subscription software, it would take a different path and or could potentially trigger, say, for example, if that particular SaaS publisher has a reclamation flow for it that will do a reclaim on the publisher's API, that would get triggered as part of the script that's behind this. So it's a very complicated script behind this that knows how to determine whether the installation is installed software locally or whether it's subscription software, and then to take a look at what type of software is and does it have a reclamation flow. If you had CSD, client software distribution, installed for some of this installed software, it would also kick off the reclamation point part with client software distribution and reclaim it through SCCM or Jamf or Intune, whatever you have already configured in your instance. So this is the workflow behind it, and this is the script that really dictates what actions need to be taken to remove the software. Now, my instance does not have client software distribution installed. So I don't have an SCCM environment that I can have automatically remove the software. So what's going to happen is that particular, and sorry, I was just filtered on some Adobe stuff here. Just let me go back and find that reclamation candidate for WinZip. It's not actually going to do anything. So the process is a manual process. Since my instance doesn't have any automated removal tech capabilities, it is a manual process to remove these particular installations. Now, you could, if you wanted to, make a copy of the reclamation flow and add in a task creation step in that flow. But again, you'd want to make a copy of the reclamation flow, make the other one inactive, and modify the copied version. It's never a good idea to modify any of our out-of-the-box flows. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rerun the integration to update my installation information, because these installations of WinZip are being manually uninstalled by our team. And then once that integration is done, you're going to see what happens now that the software installation gets removed from these devices, what will happen to the reclamation or removal candidates. Okay, so now I've finished re-importing all my data, and those software installations are no longer on those machines. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of force the update to happen on those reclamation candidates. So the reclamation candidates update weekly. So there's a job that identifies, reclamation candidates, the identify runs weekly, and the update, I think, runs daily. And that's the one that is we need to run to update these reclamation candidates, kind of move things through a little faster for our video purposes. So yes, actually this runs weekly. So, even if your reclaims and uninstalls do take a long time. So that's why these jobs only run weekly. So I'm going to click on execute now, and I'm going to let this job run. This job will take a little bit of time to run. So we're going to pause the video and just wait for this one here, updating reclamation candidates, to finish. Okay, so the updating the reclamation candidates job is finished. So let's go take a look at those removal candidates and see what has happened since then. Okay, so I'm in the removal candidates. It's already filtered for WinZip here, and just do a quick refresh. Oops. Let's do this again. We will do a WinZip. All right, there we go. So now it's filtered on removal candidates, and it's got all of the ones we had before for WinZip. And we can see they've all now been moved to a state of close complete, except for that one we did manually ourselves for that DC2, where we skipped that one. All the rest of the installs were removed by our team. They went out and did all the installs at CCM or whatever the tool is, captured the inventory that, hey, that software was removed, that installation record got removed from ServiceNow, and then that job ran to update these reclamation candidates. Now, one important thing to note is that while I was removing WinZip in this environment, we can see here the potential savings was 0. And that's because we didn't really have WinZip configured properly. It was just for demo purposes. So we didn't really end up having any costs associated with that. But not all of your reclamation candidates will be 0 cost, right? So what's going to happen is you see, for example, there's all these subscriptions for Facebook Workplace happen to be in my instance. We could go kind of take a look at some of the other ones here. It's all Facebook actually in this account. Here we go. Atlassian, Cloud8, Confluence, right? So here's a bunch of reclamation to say the potential savings. So what happens when they go to a close complete is that these potential savings are going to come around and be reflected here in the actual savings dashboard in your overview. So this is a good way to show that, hey, we saved this much money by reclaiming these software installations. So that's why it's really important to make sure you're using a lot of the flows within the system rather than just, taking a look, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and remove these. If you don't click that reclaim button and trigger that reclamation flow and have it go through the necessary steps to complete those reclamation candidates and finish off that process, it's not going to start showing any of your actual savings you've gained from reclaiming those subscriptions. And that pretty much concludes our removal candidates video. So in this video, we talked about what removal candidates are. We also reviewed the SAM 9.0 optimized software installation process, and that can be found within the process guide from Now Create. We also talked about the removal candidate process, and then I went into the tool and showed you the removal candidate process and stepping through the process of reclaiming that software and then triggering that job to update those reclamation candidates. Again, you don't have to trigger that job manually, we'll do it automatically. So for more information on removal candidates, you can go to the ServiceNow product documentation site. There's add a software removal candidate. So that's for manually adding software removal candidates. You can also go through and do software installation optimization and removal. And then there's also, again, the process guide on Now Create. So the software asset management process guide. I hope you found this video helpful, and we'll see you in the next video.